And welcome back. Of course, you are checked into the Blueprint Live. And if you have not done it so far, make sure you like and share the page. Make sure you spread the word about this. Every platform they use, make sure you go back and like it and hit that notification bell so that you can be notified when we're doing something live, just as we're doing tonight. As we continue now, because the conversation is getting even more deep, we're going to go back to my good friend who's running. She has so much knowledge. We're talking about Gabe Valamont, and we're going to be talking about the Voter Purge Act. And I know she's got some things to tell us that get your pen and pad, do as I. Write these things down that you're not aware of so that you will have them to educate yourself. Gay?
Hey y'all. So yeah, the Voter Purge Act is what we're calling it because that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It is an effort by the Florida Republicans to silence our votes, to make sure that people are disenfranchised from voting. Derek, tell us about that.
Yeah, well, as Gay said, we're going to be taking a closer look at what you may know as the Florida SAVE Act, but as Gay said, it's the Florida Voter Purge and Voter
Mm-hmm.
Suppression Act, a controversial piece of legislation that is already sparking strong reactions across the state. So you've got supporters saying that the bill is about strengthening election integrity and ensuring that only eligible voters are participating in Florida elections. But critics like those of us on the panel, we argue that it goes much further, raising
Mm-hmm.
concerns about new identification requirements, putting barriers to registration, and the potential impact on seniors, young voters, and communities of color. As this law moves forward, the real question becomes who does it impact and how will it change the way Floridians participate in democracy? So, we're going to break down what is the Florida SAVE Act, what it means for voters here at home, and what you need to know moving forward.
Wow. It's so many things when you say about even with the discouragement is really to find ways to deter us from going to the polls to vote. But with all this education, this knowledge that we're going to be sharing with everyone to show the importance to get that hype back at them to see that their voice really matters. That
Yeah.
forget that thing that mine don't matter. It does not matter if I don't vote at all. But don't take away what was rightfully fought and died for so that we can have this. What do you think about
Yeah.
that, BJ?
I mean, what I think about it is that politicians who believe in American democracy, they court
Mm-hmm.
your vote.
Mm-hmm.
Authoritarians, fascists try to do whatever they can to take your vote. And what we
Mm-hmm.
see
Right.
currently, particularly with this Voter Purge Act on the state level, with Ron DeSantis, as well as at the federal level, is that we have a rogue regime who is purposely trying to stop us from voting because they want to remain in power to have
Mm-hmm.
control over us. That are the
Absolutely.
three key things that we all must absorb into our brains, that we have a rogue regime who is trying to take away our ability to cast a vote, to stay in power, to control us. And so I think that it
Absolutely.
is incumbent upon each and every one of us to not only do what we know has been done in the past when this has been done. We don't have to go to other countries to figure out,
Mm-mm.
what they did. They've done this right here. This is all has historical precedence right here in our country. So we need to
Mm-hmm.
lean on that information and on that institutional and ancestral knowledge in order to ensure that we are election ready, not only for the primary, but also when we know they're going to gear up with those tactics in November.
No doubt about it. And something else you said that sparked another thing within me. I think you said this when I had you on a few weeks ago. It would not. It's got to be something because is they are if fearing because of the fact that our vote is so important.
Hmm.
They know what's going to happen when we bring it forth. So therefore, with all of these things that they're trying to put there to stifle us, to hold us back, they know what will happen now that we get everybody to go ahead. We got to make sure this is why it matters that you vote because they already understand the power that's there in that vote. And we get everybody to go ahead to forget this other lies that's being told and understand that this regime is up to us to change it.
No, I mean, I 100% agree. And, we don't have to call things what they call them. They're
That's right.
calling it the SAVE Act, but we all know that this is a voter purge bill, a voter purge
Mhm.
law. I've just wrote down some things like the SAVE Act, the Patriot Act, Citizens United. Those are all, I mean, they name these things the way they name them because who's going to be against uniting citizens? Who's going to be against patriotism? But we don't have to call those things what they call them. We have our own language. We got our own
Absolutely.
words. And that big, beautiful bill, what we should have been calling it is the MAGA murder budget. That's what we should have been
Yeah.
calling it, because kicking
Exactly.
people off health
I've
care.
never heard of it called that, but you're right.
Right, because kicking people off of healthcare literally in certain instances is a death sentence for them. So we should have been calling it, they were calling it, what were they calling it? The big ugly bill? That's like schoolyard. Like, oh, you call me this, I call you that. It's the murder MAGA. It is the MAGA murder budget. That is what it was. So I just think, and that same thing with the alligator Alcatraz. I don't call it what they call it. It's a concentration camp in the middle of the swamp.
It
It is.
Right.
It
Right.
is.
And I think it's important for folks to know. So, like, when we talk about this, how does it impact you, and what does that look like? Right now, what you're seeing is changes into what is acceptable forms of documentation for you to be able to not only cast your vote, but for future voters who are going to register to vote. Right now, if we look at it the way we are currently voting, we're in a situation where we go to the voting box or the ballot box, and we show our ID card, or whether it be our Florida driver's license or our Florida identification card. That no longer is going to be an acceptable form of ID. Right now, they are requiring you to have that extra form of ID, which looks like a birth certificate or it looks like a passport. When we talk about getting a passport, what do you have to have? A birth certificate. Right. So when we do this now, some people who have gotten their ID recently. So we talk about, we've had this whole hoopla about the real ID and getting a real ID and making sure that you have a star on the corner so you're able to travel. That still isn't enough to get you to be able to go and actually cast a ballot. Now, if you have gotten a new valid form of identification here in the state of Florida recently, where either your driver's license has changed, or when you've gone to the Department of Motor Vehicles, if you've provided them a birth certificate or a passport in addition to the documents that you need to get a new ID or driver's license, then I think you're already okay. But for those of us who have not provided a birth certificate or a passport in this ID, then we're going to start getting notifications to say, hey, you need to actually provide this to the supervisor of elections to ensure that you are a legitimate voter. Now, let's talk about that. They talk about wanting to make sure we safeguard so that non-citizens aren't eligible to cast a ballot. That is complete bullshit. We don't have here in the state of Florida or any other state, they don't have election fraud where dogs and non-citizens are registering and actually casting ballots. It just doesn't happen. The problem that happened in 2020 is that Donald Trump won in Florida in 2016, but then in 2020, we went to Joe Biden. And all of a sudden, no, there's rampant voter fraud. No, there's not rampant voter fraud. Nobody is actually casting. Dead people aren't voting. Non-citizens aren't voting. Cats, dogs, any of the like are not actually casting ballots to vote. It just does not happen. So this is an extra step to suppress the voters, to make sure that they don't, that people become discouraged and ultimately say, yeah, it's not worth it. But we're going to make sure that you get what you need to get sooner so that you're prepared. Because I think right now there is some saving grace that through the election cycle of 2026, we can still continue to vote the way we currently do. But starting in 2027, so if there's a special election that happens in 2027, if you haven't done what you needed to do with your birth certificate or establishing your legitimacy, as they like to say, then we will have to make sure those do it. A lot of in addition to that, student IDs, where you got students, we got all these major universities in the state of Florida, where students have polling places on campuses where they go and show their student ID and be able to cast their ballot. That is no longer an acceptable form of voter ID.
Wow.
Those communities in like the villages where they have or that are 55 and above, or retirement communities where they have their own little special ID card to indicate who they are and that they're a resident of the villages. They're no longer going to be able to use those ID cards as a valid form of identification in order to cast their ballot. So what they meant to suppress Black and brown voters is going to be hurting their Republican voters as well. black, brown, purple, pink, and white. They're all going to feel the impact of this. So again, this is not well thought out. It's actually kind of stupid. Not even kind of stupid. It's downright stupid. And this is what we have to look forward to unless we get people out to the ballot in the primary election and the general election in 2026. We've got to make a change.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I have to tell you, Derek, the thing that the statement that I get the most when talking about this act from Republicans are, why are Democrats scared to have to show an ID? And I think that is what people are most confused about. It's not about showing an ID. We've always had to show an ID to vote. We
Mhm.
take our driver's license with us to vote. They make sure we can't vote but once. There's people that sit at the desk. That's not what they're asking for anymore. Your driver's license is not a valid form of ID if it hasn't been received
Okay.
lately. You have
Mhm.
to physically take your birth certificate. And I drug my birth certificate out the other day, and it looks like anybody could have forged that. I was born in 72. They didn't have computers. All they had were like scratch pieces of paper. And it's got baby Gay was born on this day. And that's literally all it looks like. And then
Yeah,
and then having
Unbelievable.
to ask people to go get a passport. Do you know how expensive passports are?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Exactly.
over $100, and
Mhm.
that's
and Gay,
and that's a 3-month waiting period.
right.
Mhm.
And you raise a very legitimate question. When we talk about let's bring this down to rural voters or people who are seniors who were born at home, oftentimes don't have the necessary documentation to be able to prove their identification. When you talk about people who have that have gone through the adoption process, who may not necessarily have the same access to the documentation that's required for them to produce the necessary certification so that they can be deemed as eligible to vote in these elections. We're talking about these things that are going to have a disparate impact, not only on communities of color. You're going to see it on seniors. You're going to see it on youth voters. This, again, we're not well thought out. And more importantly, when we talk about this, let's talk about people. We usually, when we think about it, we think about women who have been married and have taken the name of their spouse, but that includes anybody who, men oftentimes, probably not as frequently as women do, but men oftentimes get married and assume the name of their spouse or the wife or their domestic partner or husband, whatever the case may be. Those individuals are also going to be impacted by that because they've not only got to they've got to take, in addition to their birth certificate, they've now got to take their marriage license. And God
Mm-hmm.
forbid you're one of those 51% of people who got divorced, because now you're going to have to take your birth certificate, your marriage license, and your divorce decree, all to be able to prove who you are. And this is what is talking about it. So we've got to make sure that people who fit in any one of these categories are prepared. So as they move forward in 2027, that they have all the documentation necessary and there is no barriers to casting their ballots.
Absolutely. And you made a great point there because I had to go through that to prove that I was divorced before I had to show them my divorce papers. I had to
Mhm.
bring that. I want to bring up something else though, because even now with your driver's license, this year, especially when you change them, the numbers are changing. And but your number is going to change. But it was said by the supervisor of election that if it happens before that, that it's going to still reflect back to the old number, that you don't have to worry about that. But I think that's going to be so having people wondering, is this going to be correct when I get this new one? And is it going to count? I think that all of this is done is for distractions, is to get everybody on a plane, whereas everything is so discombobulated that, okay, you get frustrated, you don't want to do it. But what we're trying to make is so important that your vote matters no matter what. Whatever they may try to bring to us to stop us, let's show them. I don't care how often they may say, oh, Democrats don't want to show an ID. No, they're trying to plant something else there that's going to be top of mind. But we know what we've got to do. And that's why the Blueprint Live is going to continually brand this in your thought process. You can do this because now the change has come and we got to stick with it.
And Gay
We
had
must.
mentioned that a lot of people think that this is just about voter ID. That's not a mistake. that people
Mm-mm.
think that. That is because the other side has branded this as a voter
Yes.
ID bill instead
Mm-hmm.
of as a voter purge bill. That is purposely
Exactly.
done in
Mhm.
branding because they can't sell the product. So they got to sell the lie because the product
Mm-hmm.
ain't worth a damn. And so what we
Absolutely.
have to continually understand is that we have a regime who is trying to what? Keep us from voting so that they can
Mm-hmm.
control the outcome of this election and stay in
Mm-hmm.
power. And I agree with you. We, just as they have done some pretty effective branding about what this
Yes,
bill isn't, we have to
that's
do
right.
branding about what this bill is and also get election ready. I'm sorry to say, we just gonna have to put in the work to get our documents. I,
I
I
Mhm.
agree.
don't think that we can hope and pray that the courts are going to come through. I don't think that we can hope and pray that one or two lawsuits maybe will give us a win. I think we need to be prepared for where this is going to go. So if that means you got to go and get your birth certificate, you need to go and get it.
Good.
If that means if you
Good.
need to go and get a passport, if you can afford an iPhone, and I know many of y'all got one, if you can get an iPhone, you could get a passport
Yeah,
because
no doubt.
we don't even know if what they're saying we need is going to be the end game. Because what we know
Exactly.
historically is that they told us that if we wanted to vote, we had to pay a poll tax. Well, you know what people did? They saved their money and they paid that poll tax.
They
They
did.
also said you had to memorize parts of the Constitution. So you know what people did? They
So
memorized the
many.
preamble. They showed up
Mm-hmm.
and said and recited that Bill of Rights. And so what they realized is that the rules that they put in place, people were overcoming those rules. So they had to resort to counting jelly beans in a jar or counting
Mm-hmm.
bubbles around a piece of soap because they
Mm-hmm.
knew they had to do something that was
Mm-hmm.
insurmountable and things that could not be overcome in order to cast a ballot. So I don't presume that they're going to do anything different. They're telling us we need birth certificates
That's right.
and passports, but I guarantee you, if we all go and do those things, they're going to
They
come up with
do
something
something.
else.
Someone else.
Every time.
Mhm.
I agree. I agree
Ab-
100%. And we couldn't say it any better, any clearer. Ladies and gentlemen, do what you got to do. Let not anything that they say prevent you or hinder you from doing what you got to do. It's time for us to get out of this that we're in. We see
Mm-hmm.
change what we need because it's affecting everybody. So let's do what we got to. If you go back, you think about when just as BJ was saying there a moment ago, what they had to learn back in the day. We can do it now, and I honestly believe they see that. They even here in Escambia County, Gabe, what you did when you turned that blue. They understand the importance of that. They understand what you did work. So what they're going to do now is try to combat that to stop that from doing that. But what we're going to do with the Blueprint Live, we're going to overpower them and show them we know how to brand just as well as they,
Mm-hmm.
if not even better.
Mhm.
That's right.
Exactly. I see everybody got smiles on their faces. I mean, like I get all hyped up. I mean, it's getting hot in here. But I mean,
Well, if you, I was going to say, if anybody has any questions about, the Save Act, please put them in the chat.
mhm,
Leave comments. We will certainly take your comments. If you even want to submit a
mhm.
video to us, we may even bring your video on air and then the panel can answer your question.
Yeah.
So, direct message us, DM us a video if you have any questions about the Voter Purge Act, anything we talked about today on
Mhm.
today's show. We're going to post an interview that we did with the chair of the Florida Democratic
Yes.
Party, and so once you watch that, if you have any questions for her, we got contacts. We can get those questions to her and maybe even invite her back to answer some of them, or we can answer them as well.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And I do believe once they watch that video of her, the number she gave, the information that she shared of what's really happening is going to inspire even more so. We're going to do even better when you find out some of the things that's already happening, what has happened already, and what we're looking forward to. We should be excited to get this going for everybody. Don't feel shy. I always tell people this: the only question that should not be asked, if you think it's a crazy question, it's not. That's the only reason that you ask it. You come to the table. If we are inviting you to the table, come on and have a piece of this filet mignon. We want all of
Yeah.
us here
Mm.
so that we
And
can
you don't
be
have to
here.
watch your language. You don't have to watch your language because the president of the United States doesn't. So why do we watch
Hello.
our language?
Right.
Exactly. And I don't know about anybody else, but I know for myself, I am so overly, overly tired of the negativity. I am so overly burned out on the resurfacing of the racism as it is. I am so overly tired of the bigotry that's being done. I'm calling a spade a spade. And that's exactly what's happening. And my being of this beautiful tan that I have, it bothers me in so many ways that I've experienced from places that I didn't think I would. But we have got to get beyond this to stop that. We're going to get old tactics to pull up to try to do things from the past to make a change. It's not going to work. And I'm sure that I'm not the only one that feel that way. We have got to make sure that all of us flood the polls, vote. That is the loudest way that you can speak. When you want to be heard, speak the loudest. Cast your vote. Get there. Talk about it. Here with Blueprint Live, talk about it. This is how we make the change. And I tell you, with our entire panel here, this is going to be one that's going to be remembered for the work that we're putting in to show that we know how to brand just as well. And we're going to be
All right.
that positive force that's going to brand it all the way. I see the smiles. I see the smiles. So that let me know I said something out there somebody I agree with.
Hey, there you go.
Exactly. And well, BJ, you had something else you wanted to go to?
I think that's pretty much
That's
it
about
on that topic. I think we can wrap this one up. It's
it.
been a
Yay.
great first show.
Yes,
Oh,
it
look at that.
has.
Look at that.
Yay!
Does anybody have any calls to action before we close out?
Yeah, I do.
I have
I want
one.
to make
I
sure.
have a
I
call
want
to
to make sure
action.
that yeah,
Okay.
I want to make
Okay.
sure that everybody, before we get off this thing, two things. Start working on locating your birth certificates, right? Because whether you get a passport or you get a birth certificate, the precedence of this is going to be your birth certificate. You know, there are certainly, if you live here in Escambia or Santa Rosa or Okaloosa counties, you can go. I know in Escambia County, you go to the Department of Health. You know, where the vital statistics is. Everywhere you want to go, you want to make sure that you are able and ready to get the stuff that you need to be able to get that birth certificate. Start working on your passport. If you want to do that, go that route. You know, there are many places. If you are far from your original place of birth or your county
Mhm.
or state of birth, you can go online to vitalcheck.com or
Exactly.
usvitalrecords.org and fill out the form. It's pretty extensive. It takes about 20 to 30 minutes to fill it out. You know, all you need is a credit card. Typically, it costs about 30 to 40 bucks, and you can actually get your birth certificate. Let's start working on that. But more
Mhm.
importantly, go and check your voter registration to make sure that you are still active and
Mhm.
ready to vote. That's going to be critical as we put together. And the last thing that I want to tell you is ensure that you sign up for vote by mail. Every person who's voting should have a vote by mail. Signing up for vote by mail doesn't mean you have to vote by mail. It just gives you an option. If you've heard me talk about it, I talk about your plan A, your plan B, and your plan C. Your plan A should be voting by mail. That gives you the easiest and most efficient way to cast your ballot. Your plan B should be your early voting. Exercise the time that the supervisor of elections in your respective county gives you in the primary and the general election to cast that ballot early. And at worst case scenario, if you have not been able to get those, go and cast your ballot on election day. Those should be the things you do. So that's my call to action. Get ready and get prepared for 2026.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yay.
Eric covered most of my my call to action, but I do want to tell anybody that is listening, you gotta let other people know what's going on with this
Mhm.
purge. People don't understand what's happening and what it means to have a voter ID. That is not the case. The case is they're trying to make you jump through a whole bunch of hoops. So
Mhm.
be sure that you are sharing this information with all the older voters, with young people who don't read bills and watch the news. Also, another call to action that I have is go sign a petition for your favorite candidate.
Mhm.
I know that I am still about 1,000 petitions away from what I need because I jumped in the race super late, and I need wet signatures on pieces of paper to from Florida voters. Any Florida voter can sign a petition for me, but that's true of any congressional candidate in the state of Florida. So
Right.
sign your petitions, make sure you have a plan to vote, and get out there and spread the word.
No doubt, no
And
doubt. And I
and
want
I
to
think
remind everybody of this as well. I'm sorry, BJ. But when we're talking about when you want to check and make sure that you are up to date, you can call. It takes about less than a minute. 850-595-3900. It takes less than a minute, and you can have that, and you'll know where you stand with your voting.
Yep.
BJ.
And my call to action is twofold. I think we all need to have an understanding that in order to bring people to your cause, you have to be attractive. And what we know is that MAGA has no qualms or issues with branding themselves, with wearing a hat, talking about their
Yep.
bigoted views. They don't. Independents and Democrats, on the other hand, we're sort of like, oh, it's not really polite to talk about
Exactly.
politics, and we just kind of
Mhm.
keep our views to ourselves. And these sycophants are screaming from the rafters about their beliefs. And so, in order
Exactly.
to bring people to your cause, you have to be, by definition, attractive. And I'm a
Exactly.
scientist, so when I think about attraction, I think about magnets. And magnets attract things. So we have to start thinking
Mhm.
about what is it that we're going to put forward that magnetizes people and gravitate towards us. But what we also have to understand is that the other side of the magnet repels. And so when you flip
Exactly.
two magnets on their opposite sides, they shoot the other way. So we have to be comfortable with knowing
Mhm.
that there are just some things that we say and that we believe in that are going to repel the 20 or 30%, but we don't need the 20 or 30%. In fact, I don't need, racist, Islamophobic, homophobic people to agree
That's
with
right.
me. And so, but in order to be attractive, you have to be a magnet with the understanding that you will also repel some people by your views. And that's okay, because when we talk about equality and freedom, for people who don't believe in that, it should repel them. And so
That's right.
we're going to keep using this platform in order to bring about liberal, sane voices in the panhandle, because I'm telling you, MAGA's got they got podcasts, they got live streams, they
Everywhere.
have all the things, and
Everywhere.
they're doing what needs to be done in order to engage with the public.
Mhm.
And so that's the purpose of this. My other call to action is make sure that like when you're seeing in your timeline, train your timeline to bring joy to your life. My timeline is animals doing cute things.
Oh.
People who may be a little overweight falling downstairs. I mean, I can't help it. I
Mhm.
laugh because that's what my timeline is. But I had to train my algorithm. And so when somebody
Mhm.
announces that they just had a baby, like I will purposely go into their comment. Now I don't know these people, and I will go into their comments and say congratulations, because I genuinely want
Absolutely.
to train my timeline to feed me positive things. And when I see something that does not jive with what I want to see in my algorithm, I mark it
Good job.
as, not interested. So my call to
Good
all of
job.
you is to train your algorithms to bring joy into your life that way. And that's just a selfish plug, because then we'll show up in your feed as well. so so those are my two things that I call to.
I mean, I mean, what better way that it can be said? I mean, we've said a lot tonight, and there's a lot that yet has to be said. But the fact of it is, you will hear so much more about the Blueprint Live. It is created for you. We're going to talk till we're blue in the face. We're going to talk till you can't hear anything but blue. And the fact of it is, it's all created for you, to educate you, to give you the knowledge that you need, and to brand it like it's never been branded before.
Hmm.
And I tell you, for the panel, I think we deserve a great big pat on each of our backs that we did a good job on this first one around. Come on, give yourself a pat on the back. I mean, try something new and look how it worked. And we're going to be back with
But
even more
more,
because, go ahead.
yeah, I was just going to say, but more importantly, let's thank the man with the plan and all the technology over there, because although he does, you would swear that this is his full time job putting this stuff
I
together.
know.
But the man is a doctor and still can do all this stuff. So shout out to BJ for making all this happen. Because I
BJ
mean,
is the bomb.
Absolutely.
if you would have waited on
I have
me, we would
talked
be
about him
looking
so
very
much.
raggedy.
I know. I know. Thank
If
God
you
it's not up
only
to me.
knew, BJ, how much I've talked about you and how much I've said the quality of your work. I
Yeah.
mean, really, your name I said, God, you wait till you see this, guys. He is just so. Mm. And
Well,
now I'm just giving
when
you.
Gay said she wanted to start a live stream, I was like, say less.
You did it. You did it. You did it. And all we can say, I mean, for this is look at the smiles. We know that we're doing something. I believe that God also directs us in things when it's things that we need to do. He puts that thought process in our minds and He makes sure that we go through with it. And as we prepare to close for this first edition of the Blueprint Live, we'd like to leave it with our viewers tonight. Make sure, number one, you like, you share, turn on that notification. And if you would like to donate, there are also areas there where you can donate. If you've got things that you would like to hear us talk about, there's an area where you can even submit some questions or anything that you want us to present to the entire community. But the fact of it is, it was put together and put together right so that we can brand the positivity. We're leaning away from all that negativity. It's going to really, really make a difference right here at home. I believe in this. Where purpose meets power, conversation creates change. Right here. That is your Blueprint Live. Until the next time, good night, guys.
Good night.